Average household income in the United States rose to over $114,000, and average net worth rose to over $1 million, both new record highs. However, that only tells part of the story, and when I looked at the average income of men in the United States, y'all asked me to look into average net worth, which I'll hit in this video. Here's a breakdown of net worth in the United States from ages 18 to ages 80, including average, median, your bottom 25%, all the way up to your top 1%. However, most of you probably range between ages 18 and 50 that watch my videos, so that's the demographic that I'm going to focus on for the rest of this video. I'm also going to hit average income, median income, household income, and retirement goals for most Americans in the United States, as well as average net worth for Americans at age 65. Again, here's a quick breakdown of average net worth from ages 18 to 80, but for the rest of this video and for most of my viewers on this channel, I'm going to focus on ages 18 to 65, and to be perfectly honest, most of you are probably between ages 18 and 45. For simplicity, I'll give us some borders to work within this video because there's a lot that we could look at, but I'm going to focus on between ages 18 to 65, roughly, and a survey that happens every year from Charles Schwab, so that can give us some historical data. I think they've been doing this since 2019. The most recent survey found that overall, Americans believe a net worth of $2.5 million makes you rich. Here's the breakdown for all Americans, as well as boomers, who are presumably the oldest and therefore presumably the wisest, say that you need a net worth of $2.8 million to be considered rich in the United States. It goes downwards from there, with Gen X saying you only need $2.7 million in net worth only. And millennials saying you only need $2.2 million. And Gen X, who is 27 this year, wraps it up with saying you only need about $1 million to be considered rich in the United States. Now that we've got some borders to work with, let's start looking at what average net worth means. If you never calculated your average net worth is assets minus liabilities equals your net worth. Those assets might include, like this example from NerdWallet, checking accounts, saving accounts, retirement savings, real estate, and ideally appreciable assets. Your liabilities is basically where your debts are. Think consumer debts, personal loans, student loans, credit card debts. That's mostly what most Americans are going to have. So assets minus liabilities equals your net worth. If you've never calculated your net worth or you want to see where you fall for the rest of this video, I highly recommend you visit this free website. Scroll about halfway down and they have a free net worth calculator that you can use, where once again you can enter your assets, your liabilities, and assets minus liabilities will give you your net worth. Now we know Americans' average net worth is a little over 1 million, but median net worth is closer to under 200,000. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I prefer to use median throughout these examples. However, I'll also give you median and average, at least for comparison. Now, how we manage that wealth looks a lot different for different households. The majority of middle class wealth, for example, their wealth is actually within their household. As we look at this chart here from USA Facts, about 40 to 60% of wealth for the middle class is in the value of their home. Whereas you start to move up the chart, the top 1% starts to diversify their assets, as you might suspect. And as you see here, the majority of their wealth is captured in stocks and mutual funds. To put that into context, just 10% of Americans own about 90% of the stock market. We got here today because in my last video, I did a profile of the average man in America as of 2025, and I got a lot of great questions that I'm going to follow up in this video. Just for those of you who missed that video, the average man was 5'9.7 inches tall. He had an average income of $84,000 and a median income of $60,000 as of 2025. The tallest men at almost 5'11 are in Alabama, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Utah, where all the average tall men there tie for about 5'10.6 inches tall. For those curious, internationally, American men rank about 47th globally at 5'9.7 inches tall. In addition to that map, I've also broken that out for you in a chart, and you can find your state here. In my last video, I talked about median income and average income. Typically, I like to use median income because I think that's a better representation of most people's experience. However, I'll give you both median and average for comparison points throughout the course of this video. When I'm talking about median, I'm talking about the middle. So that's usually going to be meaning that most Americans make 50% more and 50% less. How do you calculate median? You take the entirety of whatever population you're looking at. In this case, I'm looking at the United States, and you find the figure in the middle. Whereas when talking about average income, you take the totality of the population and you divide by that population. Average is typically prone to outliers, so that's why I don't like to use average, especially when we're talking about something like income, when someone could make $0 and someone could be a billionaire. So in most cases, when you hear me talking about income throughout this video, I'll be talking about the median. With that in mind, when we look at individual incomes in the United States as of 2025, the median income is around $50,000 and the average income is around $70,000, again being pulled higher by those higher income earners. However, this is going to vary around the United States by region, education, age, profession, and job, as well as many other factors. As I mentioned, your average man, standing 5'9.7" inches tall, has a median income of $60,000 and an average income of $84,000. This is going to be higher for full-time workers or men who work 30 to 40 or greater hours a week. I have a little breakdown for that, as well as mapped around the United States later in this video. As y'all rightfully pointed out, that's going to look different by age. I went to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and I found the median breakdown of income for men in America, full-time workers in this case, so these salaries are going to be a little bit higher for these age ranges from 16 to 65. When I dropped that video, a number of you also asked if I could stratify by single and married men. We can go to IRS data to pull that information, and here's a simple breakdown that I found at LendingTree. They did this analysis in 2024. Basically, single men had an average income of $33,000. They did not have a median breakdown, but in this case, because it is a smaller population, $30,000 is probably a good representation of this smaller population of just single unmarried men, who made, in this case, $8,000 more than single women in the same population. Self.Inc. also did a great analysis on single versus married income, finding that the average income for both single people, men and women, was $56,000, while single women made about $50,000 a year and single men earned an income of $61,000. Mind you, those figures will be a little bit higher in these cases because they did look at average instead of median, and you can find everything that I've talked about, including this study, in the links below. And you were correct, as many of you pointed out, that married men do make more. Of course, the question then becomes like the chicken and the egg. Are they married because they make more, or do they make more because they got married? I'll leave that for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and let's get back to net worth. I bring all this up because the federal government did find in their most recent study in Change in Family Finances, which also looks at net worth, that yes, while married couples do have higher incomes, not only that, generally speaking, all across the board, both couples who are married have greater wealth, and if they make more money, married or not, they also tend to have greater wealth. However, I will point out that men and women are marrying later than ever, and in some cases not at all, with your average male marrying at a little bit over age 30 or 30 and a half, almost 31, and women marrying at age 28. That's been rising every year, and in fact, there was a new record high of 25% of Americans at age 40 who had never married. To quickly review, the average male earned $84,000, the median male earned $60,000. Yes, that does include single and married men. The average woman earned $61,000. Her median salary was closer to $45,000. Because income is such a large factor for most individuals or most Americans who are not in the top 10%, I also dropped this table for you that breaks down median and average income, as well as the top 10% of individual earners in the United States. Here's that same information, but the green highlights that most Americans will earn a salaried income, but peaking between the ages of 35 and 54. We can also now look at household income. Here's a breakdown of a definition of household income from the U.S. Census Bureau, because most of the data that I'll be referring to is from the federal government. A quick summary is household income consists of all people who occupy a household. Yes, that can be one person, or as large as the family are members of individuals within the house that don't necessarily have to be family, may be counted towards that household. But for simplicity, here's a breakdown of household income by the age of the head of household. And when we look at that in totality, the median or the middle household income is $80,000 and average household income is $114,000. Again, being pulled higher by higher income earners. And keep in mind that for those individuals, as I talked about earlier in this video, that are married, yes, married men and women tend to make more money than their single counterparts. To refresh for quick reference, here's your net worth of these individuals, and this does include primary residence. In these examples, you can find a link in the description below that'll give you net worth with or without primary residence. We can then look at median income around the United States, keeping in mind that that's going to range based on cost of living in the state, as well as education and age, with median annual income in the United States for workers being around $48,000 as of 2025, average income being skewed higher, closer to $70,000. Then, based on data collected from the U.S. Census Bureau, the U.S. Department of Justice updates their data every year and releases this report of median family income, estimating household income if there's 1, 2, or 3, or 4 individuals in the household. You can find your state here. Finally, to give you 2 more points of reference for the middle class, because the middle class primarily has their wealth from income and assets, and 40 to 60% of that net worth or wealth is in their home. Here's a map of the middle class around the United States. In this table, you can find your state, the median income, and the middle class is from Yahoo Finance, and they took that definition from the Pew Research Center, which defines middle class as 2/3 to 2 times median class income to define the middle class, which they then described as a range from $50,000 to about $150,000 across the United States. Then, so we can easily normalize that data across the United States, here's what it would look like if you want to have a take-home income of $100,000 across the United States, regardless of state, local, or federal taxes. All good. But to me, talking about average net worth in the abstract isn't very useful. So to wrap this video up, I also looked at how much it would cost to retire in the United States, with the assumption that most people want a high average net worth because they want financial security, ideally in retirement or over the age of 65. We know that Americans over the age of 65 think to be rich in America, you need a net worth of $2.5 million. And according to a study from CNBC that came out in 2025, it now costs, following the 4% rule, at least $700,000 to retire in every state in the United States. Additionally, Investopedia looked at how much it costs to retire in the United States. They said the American dream, when looking at household income, cost to go to college, and the cost to raise a child, in totality is $4.4 million. Of that, however, the retirement piece was $1.6 million. So if we say that we want to have a high average net worth, not only for financial security, but also to have a secure retirement when we're over the age of 65, again, talking about assets or talking about income, which is the primary driver for most Americans, about 50% of boomers over age 65 have an income of less of $30,000 a year. If they rely on just Social Security, because 1 in 3 Americans have $0 saved for retirement, they're also looking at an annual income of just Social Security of less than $30,000. So now that we have that in mind, we can take a retirement calculator from investor.gov and estimate, if we want a more financially secure retirement, how much we would need to save based on our age or our starting age to hit that $700,000 and $1.6 million benchmark. Let's say you want to hit that 4% rule defined by CNBC to retire securely in the United States, and you want to save up to $700,000. You can play with these numbers at investor.gov. There's a free compound interest or savings goal calculator that is already pre-populated for you here. And based on the decade that you can start, or you can adjust the years. If you start at age 20, you would only need to start saving $200 a month. This does assume what I think is a conservative return of 7%, whereas if you wait to age 50, you have to save over $2,300 a month to reach that goal of having $700,000 saved for retirement, or to have a net worth of retirement not including your primary residence in this particular instance. If you want to reach the savings goal defined by Investopedia for retirement of about $1.6 million, If you start at age 20, again, using a conservative estimate of a return of 7%, you would need to save $467 a month. Whereas you wait till age 50, you would have to contribute almost $5,300 or more than $5,300 to reach the retirement goal of $1.6 million. As a reminder, here is your average income of Americans in the United States, average household income of Americans in the United States, and actual net worth of Americans in the United States. Thanks for subscribing.